So this year, Netflix put out a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel, or requel. Turning the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre into a franchise has always been like trying to hang out with your grandma's corpse. It's never going to be the same. Nothing can ever top the first one. It takes a lot of hubris to even try. But I can't stop torturing myself with these things. The ghoulish ways each one tries and fails to live up to the first one's grimy perfection always gives me a renewed respect for what the original achieved. 2 is kind of a banger though.
Slap me fire.
As I watched this latest one though, I couldn't help but notice how political it was.
Behold the joys of late-stage capitalism.
And I don't mean in the way that all horror is kind of political. You can always dig up something in a horror movie. The fear of the immigrant, fear of closed borders, fear of sexual deviancy, fear of sexual repression. No, I mean that this movie was political. It's about millennial influencers buying and gentrifying a conservative Texas town.
Gentry fuckers.
A lot of the tension is framed as right versus left, and just about everyone's personalities are defined by partisan stereotypes. But neither side wins because Leatherface kills them all before the new kids even move in. And as I watched this, I thought to myself, I think I've seen this movie before. Werewolves Within is a 2021 horror comedy which revolves around a bitter local election over whether to allow an oil pipeline to be built through their town. The liberals don't want it, the conservatives do. A lot of the tension is framed as right versus left, and just about everyone's personalities are defined by partisan stereotypes.
Tell Dr. Stalin, I make my living legally on my own fucking land. It's called freedom!
But neither side wins because a werewolf sparks a killing frenzy before the election can happen. And as I watched that movie, I thought to myself, this seems familiar. The Hunt is a 2020 horror comedy about liberal elites hunting and killing Trump supporters, right versus left. All the people are partisans, except then, no, it turns out it's more of a personal revenge thing, and anyway it doesn't matter because neither side wins. The Trump supporters die, and the liberals are killed by an outsider. And as I watched that movie, I thought to myself, American Horror Story Cult is a 2017 TV series about the aftermath of America's 2016 election, during which a Trump-supporting cult leader uses his minions to terrorize a mentally ill Jill Stein supporter and campaign for first a local election and then the U.S. Senate. We are explicitly told who every member of the main cast voted for, and it's pretty evenly split, so there's a lot of tension between the right and the left, until about the 4th or 5th episode, at which point it's revealed that just about everyone was a part of Kai's gang all along, and the conflict switches into a men against women kind of thing. In these projects, no side is right, everyone is wrong. They set up all these political conflicts in the beginning only to resolve them by having some apolitical force swoop in and kill everyone until there's no one left to care. Welcome to Acolytes of Horror, where we examine the horrors of life through the horrors of film. My name is Nathan, unless you're the kind of person that finds it annoying when the video essay guy gets too chummy with you, in which case please just feel free to close your eyes and pretend this part is a voiceover. If you are triggered by trigger warnings, please close your ears now. And for the rest of you, please be advised that we're talking about American politics today. But don't worry, I promise not to pick any sides or show any bias. On November 8th, 2016, Donald Trump was elected the 45th President of the United States, which was the best or worst thing to have ever happened ever. This was an event that bitterly divided the American people. The left completely lost their minds. Or, well, hang on, that's kind of biased. Maybe you think this election was an extension of the right losing their minds after Obama was elected. You know, that's another interpretation. One thing I think we can all agree on is that politics is happening a lot lately. A lot of people are talking about politics a lot lately. More, maybe, I think, than they used to. And politics is scary. Horror is scary. It would be really stupid if I did the whole video essay like this, right? But that's kind of what these 4 very political premises do with their own source material. And the more I wonder why that is, the more fascinated I become by what I think these 4 projects reveal about the political comfort zones of Hollywood genre pieces, the statements that they can and can't make if they want big studios to produce and market them. Movies usually bury their politics in symbolism and subtext. When movies do reflect current-day politics, they usually don't like saying good guy versus bad guy. Instead, they go free guy versus Kiwi guy. To use an example from horror, Ready or Not reflects America's growing terror of maniac rich people who will do anything to hold on to their ill-gotten wealth. But our hero Grace is not a socialist fighting Trump supporters. She never says,
"By the time I get done killing all you neoliberal Reaganomics bastards, they'll have to start calling the 1% the 0.999%.
This line right here is about as on the nose as it ever gets.
Fucking rich people!
The movie has a very leftist view of class warfare, but I'd say most right-wingers were able to watch and enjoy it just fine. It came out in 2019, but if you told me this movie was set during the Obama, Biden, or Bush eras, I would believe you. But for whatever reason, these projects chose not to mask themselves with metaphor. They aren't about Trump himself or the effects of his policies, but they do focus pretty intently on the hyper-partisan world that he gleefully provoked. All of the casts are split right down the middle between conservatives and liberals. Their political allegiances are the characters' defining attributes. And these aren't stories about like a liberal character and a conservative character fighting over something that's personal only to them. These are 2 opposing groups disagreeing over the direction that they want their larger communities to develop, which might sound like a bold choice compared to something like Ready or Not, until you actually watch these things and realize that something about this more direct approach seems to have made the filmmakers even more timid about showing a bias than ever before. These stories can't really be about anything except for how, like, politics is crazy. And, you know, yeah, politics is crazy. I mean, because I'm releasing this video in particular, there's a large, loud faction of people who are coming for my ass. These people hate anyone who talks about art through a political lens, because the only way to truly love something is to think about it as little as possible. I don't expect every movie to be a manifesto. It sucks when a story reduces the complexities and contradictions of the human experience down to tidy little tirades, but I think it's interesting to talk about all the ways that these 4 projects choose not to have their own conversations. You know, like, they chose this subject matter. And so before we get into all this, I want to say up front that while I am going to be criticizing these projects mostly, I don't really hate any of them. The Hunt is a genuinely great movie with constant twists and turns that surprised me from start to finish. Betty Gilpin's performance in particular is this masterclass in repressed rage that's both hilarious.
Cigarettes in Arkansas only cost $6. You fucked up, bitch!
And strangely more poignant than any commentary in the actual script. American Horror Story Cult mostly revolves around an increasingly unlikely series of sinister reveals.
What'd I miss? We were the Zodiac.
Like, half of this show is just flashbacks trying to make sense of the latest ridiculous reveal, but it's just so shameless that it's hard not to get swept up into the trashy joy of all the nonsense.
We have to follow Manson's playbook, but do it bigger. One dead pregnant lady isn't gonna do the trick. What the people need, what we have to give them, is a night of 1,000 shades!
Werewolves Within is more cute than funny. It doesn't even try to be scary, and some of the improvised dialogue is better than others.
Oh, that's range string me.
What is that?
That's it.
But the two leads are charming as heck, and the pace speeds along in a way that sustains a consistently pleasant energy.
Smell for the ranger.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Not littering, I'm just excited.
Yeah, not judging, just watching it.
Netflix Chainsaw Massacre is a by-the-numbers slasher filled with irritating characters, and the setups for most of the kills tend to require all of the victims to be some of the dumbest people alive.
Don't open the... Dude, where are you going?
But it's shot pretty well, and the kills themselves are gleefully splashy. I mean, Leatherface snaps a cop's arm in half and stabs him in the neck with his own jagged stump of a bone, so I can only get so mad at it. I say all this because I'm going to be stripping these 4 stories down to just their political subtext, and there's more than one way to enjoy or criticize a movie. I'm not here to say that these projects are like bad because they don't share my exact view of the world. I think actually most of the creative decisions we're going to be talking about today were subconscious ones that shouldn't define your entire opinion of them. But the weird ideological limbo that these projects live in, it does affect the rest of the storytelling, and I guess that's as good of a place to really dig in as any, because most of the supporting cast feels less like people than walking social media posts. They talk at each other but never listen.
I am so sick of you people looking down on us. It really pisses me off.
No, you're pissed because an educated black man ran the country for 8 years.
One of you would rather terrorize us than let Mr. Parker build his harmless pipeline.
Oh, Jesus.
Sorry, big gun makes you uncomfortable.
I've seen bigger.
So much of character development revolves around establishing a character's point of view and then challenging that point of view somehow, you know, like, will the world change them or will they change the world? But here, both the characters and the world are unchangeable. To which you might say, well, duh, these are comedies about division. Horror comedies at that. They're not supposed to sit around and talk about their feelings all day. It's funnier and scarier if they don't understand each other. But what I think is unique here is in the way that we, the audience, aren't supposed to understand them either. So there aren't many moments where anyone's point of view is challenged at all, not even for the sake of a joke. There's a funny part in Werewolves Within where everybody loads up on guns to protect themselves from the werewolf while they bunker down for the night.
Where my gun goes, I goes.
But when it does attack, they just shoot each other. So they wind up putting all the guns away. And there's a line in The Hunt where they're deciding which Trump supporter to kidnap, and they all get really uncomfortable when somebody picks a black guy.
Listen. If we don't have at least one person of color in this, it is going to be problematic.
But jokes like this, which actually affects how characters make decisions, are really rare. Far more frequently, partisanship is expressed as name-calling or sloganeering.
Liberal snowflake. Y'all city slickers suck.
For the record, asshole, climate change is real.
Accurate assessment for a gas man.
Well, I used to do a little brown bear hunt in Siberia.
How does it feel to exercise your white privilege and execute people of color with impunity?
Lock her up. Yeah, lock her up. Lock her up.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
Get woke.
Oh, you fucking snowflake!
Grab her right in the pussy! I think this is funny.
The actual beliefs of the two factions barely affects how the plot progresses, especially how it ends. Nobody's character arcs reflects anything about their beliefs. Most of them don't have arcs at all. It's not really red versus blue so much as red versus blue. Political speech is mostly used as a way to reveal a character's pettiness.
The evidence is all there. T-H-E-I-R.
Fragility.
This is just like what happened to me in college after 9/11, when I couldn't leave my apartment.
Hypocrisy.
Real change is here.
Or stupidity.
You are 40% more likely to be the victim of a violent crime committed at the hands of an illegal immigrant.
Where are you getting your information from?
Facebook.
its biggest narrative function is to make it more fun for us to watch them die.
Do you think you should be afforded mercy just because you're a girl?
No.
As much as Finn likes to talk about how everyone should be a good neighbor,
like Mr. Rogers,
these aren't stories about how we need to listen to each other better. They are stories about how everyone needs to just shut the fuck up.
That's fun, that's funny.
Hey. Everyone, hey, can I have your attention, please? Hey, everyone.
The horror of these projects don't come from oil pipelines, the 2016 election, or gentrification. Instead, the horror is caused by the conversation itself. In Werewolves Within, all the fighting over the oil pipeline is used by the werewolf to kill much easier.
But Beaverfield is perfect. Everyone else just took care of themselves with their fear and petty nature.
The liberals in The Hunt are seeking vengeance because a bunch of Trump supporters turned their leaked group chat into a viral conspiracy theory that ruined their careers. It's especially notable that it's not enough for them to kill these people, they have to teach them a lesson.
Correct. To let them just expose their biases.
Yeah, or we could just shoot them as soon as they grab their guns.
Then they're not gonna know why we're killing them.
I own 7 guns.
Why?
What?
Why do you own 7 guns?
I'm just asking, why pick you? Of all people, you must have done something to pop up on their radar. There'd have to be a reason is all. Can you think of anything at all, no matter how minor, that might make somebody want to try something?
American Story Cult sees politics as a cult. Having political convictions just makes everyone in the cast that much easier to manipulate. There is no right and left, only leaders and sheep.
And when we get our shit together and cause enough panic and fear, the sheep are going to turn to their leaders to save them. Protests across the country. The sheep are afraid.
Leatherface's rampage begins in Chex Mix Chainsaw only after an argument about racism upsets his surrogate mother so much that she keels over and dies. Crack! Oh, my arm! If everyone had just minded their own business, nothing bad would have happened in these stories. Horror has always been political, but here we have the fear of politics.
So you guys are what, like a cult?
We're idealistic individuals who want to build a better world.
Yeah, that's a cult.
Political partisans are the new go-to horror victims. Horny teenagers are off the hook. Blogging will now get you killed far faster than fondling. It's easy to see why a room full of studio execs would be inclined to greenlight stuff like this. In a world where the right and left can't agree on anything, we can at least all relate to the fantasy of rampaging through these complicated debates like a junior high boy playing Grand Theft Auto. They try to appeal to both sides by mocking both sides. It's like the narrative version of a Comedy Central roast. Some jokes can be disarming and fun, but just as many wind up feeling awkward and off-putting. As a pretty politically engaged guy myself, I can tell that these stories aren't trying to offend me, but I can also tell that I'm not really the target audience here. So who is this for? If partisans are the new horny teenagers, who are the virgins?
You know, a lot of people don't think about politics all day. To me, it was important that that voice was part of the conversation. There's a way to make a movie that doesn't hold any politics in it that everyone can enjoy.
The characters have very strong views about Trump and Hillary Clinton, but it really is not about them. It really is about the cult of personality that can rise in a divisive society. That's what this show is about.
The social and political landscape of our country is definitely present in our film, although I wouldn't say that the film is trying to say anything. The characters in our film are saying things and they have points of view, but the film isn't.
Finn was the jumping off point as someone who, in a divided America, is a real connector and wants people to get along, wants there to be a dialogue between people. He's someone who is sad and irritated by conflict. That's the jumping off point for the whole movie, really, is this central character who doesn't like the acrimony he's seeing between people.
If you want to live to the end of these horror stories, you have to stay neutral. Werewolves Within begins with Ranger Finn arriving at Beaverfield. Our hero is neither noticeably for or against the pipeline.
Beautiful nature here. Be a shame to break ground so close to national forest. So sorry, I wasn't trying to be like, oh, it'd be a shame, and I wasn't trying to make a...
He never agrees or disagrees with anyone who expresses their opinion about it. Our hero has bigger problems, you see. He's too nice.
Throw a pair. Not to sound too heteronormative, but maybe Charlotte's right. Maybe you should man up.
Everyone walks all over him, so you think it's going to be like a lot of other nice guy movies where at the end he finally learns to stand up for himself and lash out when he needs to. But instead, his big climax is this monologue where he says,
I tell you, I'm a nice person, right? I'm considerate. People want me to change, but there's nothing wrong with me. It's fucking okay to be nice. Pardon my language. It's effing okay to be nice.
Crystal in The Hunt has the moral high ground because she didn't participate in the online hashtag that set the liberals off in the first place. They accidentally abducted the wrong person.
Oh, you done fucked up, lady. You got the wrong Crystal.
Furthermore, her entire character is defined by her utter lack of interest in both friend and foe.
Why didn't they just kill you when you came in?
Don't care.
You want to hear my theory?
Not really.
You don't care why they're doing this to us?
Trying to kill me. I don't give a shit why.
Lila in the Plexus Brainflaw Massacre is maybe the grossest example of these four stories. Her sister is involved with the big auction, and she's just kind of along for the ride. But the fucked up part is she was recently, shot in a school shooting. She keeps having these traumatic flashbacks of when she was lying on the floor watching her classmates bleed out. You might think she would be kind of a left-leaning character with a backstory like that, and I guess she is.
I mean, anyone who blasts diesel into the atmosphere like that truly gives zero fucks about, anything.
But Lila mostly just wants to be left alone.
Everyone expects me to do something special with my life now, and my friends were the special ones.
If Lila does have strong feelings about guns, they are an obstacle to be overcome. The climax of her whole character arc is this moment. Oh wait, that's funny, the gun didn't work. Maybe that's some kind of commentary. Oh, no. Right, she does it again. As horrified as Allie is about Trump's election, she is revealed as a political black sheep in the very first episode when it comes out that she voted for Jill Stein.
But Jill Stein? Come on, we needed 10,000 votes and you would have been one of them.
A choice that infuriates her Clinton-supporting wife so much that she joins a murder cult led by a Trump supporter who helps her terrorize Allie until she is committed to a psych ward and loses custody of her son. The beginning of the season is about Allie's absolute horror that Trump won the election, and the first episode in particular is actually a really effective dramatization of how those first few weeks felt to a lot of left-leaning people. I was surprised by how viscerally it took me back to that old panic.
What's gonna happen with Merrick Garland?
The feeling that clowns have taken over the world and now nothing is safe. The way neighbors started feeling like enemies. But from episode 4 on, it turns into more of a Fight Club meets Revenge of the Sith type show.
Fear isn't like a virus. When fear finds more hosts, it gets stronger, scarier.
What fills your dark heart with dread? Do it.
Switching focus to the sneaky seductions of cult leader Kai, with Allie having a more reactive role on the sidelines. She only retakes control of the narrative when she returns from the psych ward, after which she is a murderous badass who never really talks about politics again. Even her season finale Senate campaign frames her as a political outsider.
It's time we band together to bring down all cults. The Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the entire two-party system.
She gets elected not because of her vision for the world she wants to build. We actually don't even know what that vision is, but because voters are impressed by how strong she is when she stands up to Kai during the climax. And then at the end, it's revealed that she's the new leader of this other cult that's devoted to cutting up men, which was secretly responsible for the Zodiac killings. Out of the 4 politically neutral protagonists we've covered, the only one who runs for office also becomes a murderer and cult leader. The one thing these stories seem to be saying loudly and proudly is division is bad. Political polarization has gotten too extreme, which, sure, but saying the answer to all that is neutrality or indifference implies that both sides are equally responsible for these divisions. By staying neutral, they can't help but choose one side over the other in a way, because if one side is worse, then it makes them look better. So, who is who? Well, this is where we kind of have to talk about the elephant in the room. I grew up in a third-degree burn of a red state. I was such a little Bush boy that this was my fucking yearbook photo. When I left home, I became an Obama buddy, but then I got disillusioned with the Democrats, and now I'm a Bernie bro. I am such a Bernie bro that if you look up Bernie bro on Wikipedia and scroll down to the criticism section, you will find one of my articles complaining about how the term is problematic. So I've definitely seen the best and worst of both sides. Actually, in that spirit, please indulge me long enough to clarify that I voted for Biden and Clinton in the general elections. Anyone who's ever had dealings with Democrats on Twitter knows how necessary that disclaimer was. But as many problems as I do have with the Democrats, it's actually very easy to figure out who is most responsible for our current divisions. All we have to do is head on back to Wikipedia and type political polarization in the United States. And right at the tip top of the page, you will find the phrase,
polarization among U.S. legislators is asymmetric, as it has primarily been driven by a substantial rightward shift among congressional Republicans.
Followed by citations from 5 different sources. The now routine Republican strategy of obstruct until they're fucked started in the 90s with Newt Gingrich, accelerated with Fox News, then Mitch McConnell and the Tea Party. 3 decades of indiscriminate mudslinging, which paved the way for Donald Trump, who divided the nation so sharply that this November will probably see the successful elections of many politicians who are running their campaigns around his thoroughly debunked lie that the 2020 election was somehow stolen for Joe Biden. A conspiracy theory that led to an attempted coup of the United States Capitol.
And that they didn't sneak into the White House, they lied, they cheated, they scammed, and every day the Democrats violate their sacred oath to the Constitution. And if you can't impress your friends on that, they shouldn't be your friends. So I love you people madly, but I'd love you more if you went forward and just went berserk on the skulls of the Democrats and the Marxists and the communists.
There really is no left equivalent to guys like that. We just have obnoxious teenagers on Twitter. If anything, the Democrats especially fetishize civility to a fault. They made Joe Biden president because he promised to make America polite again.
If you elect me, I'm going to be an American president. There's going to be no red states or blue states, just the United States of America.
And if we can decide not to cooperate, we can decide to cooperate as well.
Or we can choose a different path and together take this chance to heal, to reform, to unite.
But the discourse around how we got here, even among left-leaning publications, often treats this like it's a bipartisan problem. The New York Times editorial board infamously published an op-ed recently declaring that America has a free speech problem, where it has vowed to spend months compiling a free speech panel to document all the ways our political discourse has deteriorated. It bends over backwards to portray both the right and the left as 2 equally opposing forces. My favorite part is this paragraph right here that says our free speech is being threatened because on one hand, the right is passing laws that are censoring our schools, but on the other hand, the left is equally at fault because of what we believe. Cancel culture absolutely does exist, and it can really suck. I love me some Lindsay Ellis and ContraPoints as much as any blue-blooded American. You know, yeah, the left can crack some monster farts, but the right is pooping on the kitchen table, and yet somehow the dominant narrative is that everyone needs to clean this crap up so we can all sit down and have a nice dinner together. The hunt aims at both sides, but only one side forced them to push back their release date after becoming Trump's Twitter target for the day. There's the sense in these 4 stories that the presumably left-leaning screenwriters were so afraid of offending the right that they actually wind up portraying the left as the bigger villains of the two.
I hate this country, what it's become. The only thing I love right now is my son, and I will do whatever it takes to make the world a better place for him, even if it means burning it all down.
American Horror Story Cult does at least get very specific about how many Trump supporters were defending a patriarchy that they felt was being threatened. But it's also implied that Kai never would have become radicalized if he hadn't had a feminist for a therapist. As evil as Kai's plans to... what did he want?
I need women's rage to tear it all down, because then I'm going to be the last one standing to lead them.
Right, that. As bad as that is, this woman literally wants to stab half of the world to death.
Unleash female rage. Incite the American woman's desperate and patriarchally contained violent anger. Give her no choice but to lash out and cut up every man they see.
By the way, I love this joke.
Who is this?
My anger management counselor.
But as much as it focuses on toxic masculinity, it's pretty cagey about exploring why this behavior thrives in right-wing spaces.
My parents were Reaganites. I interviewed Barry Goldwater for my high school paper. I've seen conservatives up close. You're not a conservative.
While the hunt does eventually show some ugly sides to the Trump supporters that challenges your initial sympathies for them, the fact remains that they aren't the ones who are abducting and murdering people out of spite.
It's a P score, 8.5.
What does that P stand for again?
Piece of shit. I vote in.
In.
Even at their worst, you never see the right-wingers kill anyone just for the fun of it. The first few scenes of the movie actually also keep tricking you into thinking different Trump supporters are going to be the main hero of the movie before abruptly killing them off. It turns their deaths into a punchline, but this convention also puts you in their shoes and encourages you to empathize with their bravery and teamwork, qualities that the liberals never display. In Werewolves Within, the werewolf winds up being the liberal love interest who spouts a bunch of Me Too language to justify one of her killings.
Some men do this thing when they want to guide you, where they put their hand on your lower back.
By the way, this is not a great look for a movie that was produced by Ubisoft, a company that just got caught covering up sexual harassment allegations from its employees for years and years.
I had an incident at work.
Did you touch someone?
No.
'Cause time's up. You too?
As for the Sex Mix Case Law Massacre, you can make a pretty convincing argument that it's about a bunch of liberals who get what's coming to them when they try to take down a Confederate flag. The whole narrative is about besieged Confederates being colonized by multi-ethnic young people who are coming to fix their town.
But we have a vision for this place. All it needs is young blood. People like us, tired of the big city, looking for a fresh start.
That flag belonged to my great-granddaddy. It reminds me of him.
I personally don't have a lot of sympathy for this explanation, but it is at least the only example in any of these movies where someone is earnest about where they are coming from. I disagree with her, but I understand her. Compare that to... well...
We have a bus full of potential investors on the way here. If they see this flag, they're not going to buy.
I guess Dante here doesn't have any ancestors who had their own history with that flag. And horror isn't the only genre that features a divided cast of political idiots who are getting everyone killed because they can't just get along. Adam McKay's Don't Look Up does at least have a plot which hinges around the consequences of the debate that the whole movie revolves around. You know, the people who believe in the meteor that's coming to kill everyone are right, and the ones who won't look up are very, very wrong. But people who do want to help just add to the noise. With the exception of the main characters, everyone who wants to stop the meteor is either self-obsessed or barely paying attention.
I don't know, I'm starting to think that all this end of the world stuff's bullshit.
The more our main characters try to advocate for action, the more corrupt or crazy they become. Just like the 4 horror projects we've been covering, the horror comes from trying to participate in the conversation at all. Environmental activists and protesters are put in the same montages as the crazy InfoWars people screaming about how Dr. Mindy is a pornographer. The movie does have a funny bit with Chris Evans poking fun at the media's love of neutrality that I like quite a bit.
This pinpoints both up and down. Because I think as a country we need to stop arguing.
That is so refreshing. I think we're all tired of the politics.
But at the end, right before the meteor kills everyone, Dr. Mindy gives up and turns off the TV, which the audience feels as a moment of relief and arguably character growth. Ah, the sweet silence of certain death. It's worth mentioning that I think this narrative framework can be effective. Knives Out also features a cast of idiots who are too busy arguing about politics to overhear the details of their patriarch's final argument with his soon-to-be murderer.
Oh, Jesus. I'm gonna disappear until the politics talk is done.
The bleeding heart progressive girl is just as complicit in her family's greed as her alt-right Nazi cousin. But it works a lot better because all the political arguing is a very small part of what is mostly a movie about class. Even though Marta is directly invited to join in on the politics talk, she never says anything. Not because she's uninterested or too polite, but because she knows it could get her fired. The conservatives and liberals are equally hypocritical to make a point about how both parties are so corrupted by wealth that working class people are pretty much on their own. It's interesting to compare this family to Werewolves Within's love of niceness in particular, because the family is relatively nice to Marta, but their niceness is often used as a tactic to either make themselves feel better about her lower status within their hierarchy.
I thought you should have been at the funeral. By the way, I was outvoted.
I thought you should have been there. I was outvoted.
Or to outright manipulate her into doing what they want. It's kind of psychologically complicated, right? It's almost as if these characters resemble actual, people. I don't know how influential these silly projects will be in the long run, but I think it's worth talking about these tropes while they're still developing, because Hollywood has a way of repeating a lot of the same narrative patterns when stuff is set in certain time periods. Movies and TV are such a huge part of how we build myths out of history, and those myths often wind up being the only thing we wind up ultimately remembering. For example, if you're my age or younger, I wonder how much you'd really be able to tell me about the Vietnam War. If you're like me, your school didn't really teach it that much, and most of what you know about it you learned from movies. If you're like me, the first image that comes to your mind is mostly limited to that of terrified foot soldiers wandering aimlessly through a jungle, trying to achieve objectives they don't really understand and getting killed by someone for some reason. We get a sense that this war was confusing and maybe even pointless, but that's about it. Vietnam was a politically divisive war, to say the least, and wouldn't you know it, most Vietnam movies are about that division much more than, say, the Viet Cong, whose motivations are usually left as mysterious as the rustling leaves they lived amongst. The focus is instead on the confusing nihilism which has infected the American identity. Critic Pat Ofterhide called this mini-genre noble grunt films.
The noble grunt films collectively recast the war as a test of physical and, much more important, psychological survival of the person who had no authority and too much responsibility. The war is seen from the viewpoint of the American soldiers in the barracks and bars, in the jungles and paddies, rarely in the air or on water. The war is confined to the years in which the most ground troops were present. The battlefield has been internalized, and the enemy is not so much the Vietnamese as the cold, abstract forces of bureaucracy and the incompetence of superiors. Anti-authoritarianism is a strong tradition in American popular culture, but the anti-authoritarianism that suffuses these films is of a special sort. It has nothing to say about authority badly wielded, and evidences instead a collapse of faith in the authorities. Distrust of politics in general is the corollary to that collapse of faith.
The image that sums up these movies best might be this poster for Oliver Stone's Platoon. An image of a dying soldier throwing up his hands in utter confusion and despair as carnage rages without context all around him. Why is this happening, he seems to say, with the implication being that there is no why. His death is random and without purpose. The tagline famously reads, "The first casualty of war is innocence." The innocence that is lost in these movies is the very idea that it is possible to make sense of this conflict at all. Higher principles of right and wrong are exposed as naive and irrelevant in the face of a more immediate struggle for survival.
I think now, looking back, we did not fight the enemy. We fought ourselves.
Did you hear that? They were fighting themselves, not you, or you, I guess. As Ofterhide concludes,
the Vietnam movies of the later 80s expressed and helped to shape a consensus that the event was not a war, but a tragedy.
Now let's come back to the present and chew on one more question. For those who come after us, say 50 years from now, what will be the first image that comes to their minds about our current moment and all that led up to it? Will it be remembered as a war or a tragedy? These stories are getting at something that everyone can relate to. We've all had shitty political conversations that just didn't have to go down the way that they did. Things can turn into a Jekyll and Hyde horror show real fast, and I've been the monster myself at times. I'll never forget driving home from seeing Denzel Washington's version of Fences, which concerns, among other things, this theme of absent black fathers. I had brought along a conservative family member, and in the car ride home they made this remark like, why is it that so many black guys leave their families? I immediately became infused with what I imagined to be the combined righteous zeal of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Frederick Douglass, Toni Morrison, and Harriet Tubman as I said,
"That is not true."
And they were like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. And so, speaking truth to power so that I might bring power to the people, I said,
Whatever. Keep watching Fox News.
It was a really quiet drive after that. And later I did realize, no, that is actually a pretty big problem in the black community. Maybe if I'd actually responded to that question with genuine curiosity and been, a little nicer, that could have led to a more productive conversation about how mass incarceration, poverty, and toxic masculinity can fuck up a family. Maybe not, right? Like, that's probably just a fantasy, but notice how it's a very different fantasy than the political escapism of these 4 horror stories, which probably would have just had me not say anything. And then a vampire would have lunged from the back seat and comically bitten my family member's neck. The vampire drinks the blood, spraying out of the whistling artery, slopping red all over the front windshield. We crashed into a crowd of cartoonishly antagonistic Antifa demonstrators, the arms and legs of activists bursting around us like bowling pins. And when the laugh track finally calms down, I'm the only survivor. I sigh, shake my head, and say, can't we all just get along? These projects use the aesthetics of real political agendas to demonstrate how believing in anything is antisocial and self-destructive. They're far from the first pieces of American media to do so. In fact, I'd say they reflect an attitude that's so deeply entrenched in our culture that the filmmakers probably didn't even think about it, but that's kind of my whole point. They are a small part of a much larger outlook that is hostile to the idea of agitating for a better world. So much of actual activism is the struggle to destroy the political apathy that these projects seem to long for. Activism is about just making people aware that even if you choose not to speak, that silence is still a part of the conversation that affects the result. As Elie Wiesel famously said, neutrality favors the oppressor, never the victim. I really do like Finn's monologue about how he's proud of being nice. It's a clever reversal of a trope that often glorifies toxic masculinity. But it is curious to me that he's saying this to a werewolf who is about to eat him alive. As nice as Finn is, when the teeth and claws come out, he's not too nice to fight back. The left has its share of smuggery and thuggery, but I don't know, it just seems like a weird historical moment to be writing stories about how if you follow politics, it doesn't matter what side you're on. If you care, you are the problem. Just shut up and be nice. Hey there, thanks for checking out my work. This was a particularly neat one because it came kind of organically out of my Patreon exclusive videos that I make, where I talk about just a new horror show or TV thing or whatever each month. We talked about Texas Chainsaw and all these other ones, and I just started thinking, wow, there's a lot of overlap. Maybe I could make a whole video out of this, and it turns out I could, because I did. So yeah, that's on Patreon. I think I'm actually going to cover Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future and Alex Garland's Men on there. A lot to unpack there. Otherwise, keep your eyes on this here channel. I'm bound to make an appearance again eventually. And in the meantime, don't get your face ripped off by a hillbilly. Please. Thank you.